Prime Minister Modi's first decade as the Indian Premier came with its fair share of ups and downs and some surprises in between. Modi is the only Prime Minister to be sworn in for a third consecutive time since Jawaharlal Nehru. But the voters' mandate for the third term is for a coalition government, and that means new dynamics and a change in the way decisions are made. So as Prime Minister Modi prepares to lead the nation once again, the international community is keenly observing the potential shifts and continuities in India's foreign policy. Joining me in this exclusive conversation is Mr. Ram Madhav, an RSS ideologue and president at the India Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Madhav. Let's begin with Modi 3.0, the swearing-in ceremony. We're looking at neighborhood first plus Sagar diplomacy over here. Pakistan and China, of course, being the biggest problem, but we see that the Maldives is here despite the problems that we've seen between the two countries in the recent past, as also the fact that China continues to remain a major challenge for India.
Yes, you may recall that Prime Minister Modi's very important foreign policy initiatives, one of the important initiatives has been the neighborhood first policy. We accorded utmost importance to our relations with our neighborhood. In the last 10 years, we extended a lot of two-way support to many of these neighboring countries. We built strong partnerships. Today, all these countries look up to India. You may recall again that in 2014 itself, when Prime Minister Modi took oath of office for the first time, all the leaders of the SAARC countries were invited. At that time, SAARC was, of course, the flavor of the season. 2016 onwards, we had some issues with SAARC. Subsequently, BIMSTEC came into play. Altogether, neighborhood first has been one of the important, initiatives or articles of faith when it comes to the foreign policy of Prime Minister Modi's government. In line with that, this third swearing-in ceremony of our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, will witness the participation of leaders from most of the neighboring countries, from Nepal, from Bhutan, from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Remember, Maldives need not always be seen from a China prism, first of all. Regime change is common in Maldives. Initially, there was a regime which was not very friendly with India. You know, when Modi ji came to power, the regime that was in power in Maldives was not very friendly with India. Subsequently, regime change happened. We have seen 5 years of a regime which played very friendly role with India. Right now, there is a regime which apparently made some statements initially that sounded as though they are not they want to move away from India and all. They asked our very small contingent of naval personnel to leave their island, etc., etc. But subsequently, as the invitation from Prime Minister Modi reached Malé, one of the first responders to accept that invitation was the new president of Maldives. So from Maldives side also, there is an effort today to show that there is nothing like they are close to one country and they are against another country. We must remember one thing while talking about the region. In this region, there are two major powers, namely India and China. Countries in the region are free to have relations with both the countries. One should not expect these countries in our region only to have ties with either us or they. This either me or they is not our policy. Countries can have relations with both the neighbors, both the countries. One can be friendly with China as well as friendly with India. That is no problem as far as India is concerned. What we always insist as far as our neighbors are concerned is that keep India and your relationship in mind while building relationships with other countries. Keep our relationship in mind. As true neighbors, we should ensure that our relations with other countries should not affect the relationship of our friendly neighbor. On that principle, countries will naturally have relations with other countries. As far as India and China are concerned, there is a bilateral dispute about the border. Beyond that bilateral dispute, Geeta, you know that we have big trade relationship between our two countries. Incidentally, China happens to be India's largest trade partner today, standalone trade partner. So it should be seen at different levels. We should not try to see it only from one prism of if you are my friend, you are the enemy of the other. There is a standoff at the border. That is one challenge which is purely bilateral between our two countries. We have been holding a number of rounds of dialogues. We have achieved so much of success. There were 8 standoff points when the standoff began some 3 years ago. Today, through negotiations, 20 rounds of negotiations, we have been able to resolve the standoff at 5 points. 3 points still remain. We will sort them out through negotiations. That particular border standoff apart. The other challenge from China will be regional and global, not necessarily bilateral, remember. In the global context, China is pursuing a particular policy which wants to see China anointed at the top of the global order, world order. It wants to impose a particular worldview that it pursues on the countries, not only in our region, but in the whole world. It's trying to impose its model on Africa, in Central Asia, in countries in Europe, Latin America. That will certainly be a challenge for all the important countries in the world who want to pursue a democratic and free, liberal world order. That challenge is a global challenge where we are definitely on the side of those who want to preserve the current liberal world order.
Well, Mr. Madhav, the other big challenge for India has been the Khalistan issue at a time when during this election we've seen 2 Khalistani sympathizers win the election. It just seems like this is a growing problem. It is not going to end anytime soon. And Modi 3.0 will have to handle not just the issue of Khalistan at home, but also the situation with various countries.
Certainly, it is slowly emerging as an important challenge. Earlier, we always believed that the people of Punjab, having experienced the bloodbath of the Khalistan movement years of late 1970s and early 1980s, would never allow that demon to come back. But, these 2 leaders who publicly owe allegiance to Khalistan cause, getting elected, sends a signal. One should be very wary of this kind of a development. I must mention here that this is not just a challenge for the ruling government or ruling party alone. It is a challenge for the entire political spectrum in India. Democracy offers a good opportunity also. Now, tomorrow they come to the parliament, those 2 elected members. They have to take oath, proclaiming allegiance to Indian Constitution. That's how an MP takes oath. So once you take oath in the name of Indian Constitution, you are expected to be loyal to this country. Whether they will remain loyal or whether they will still pursue their separatist cause is for us to see. But also, it's for the entire political spectrum in the country to put probably some good sense in the minds of those people. But I feel that democracy is a great soothing element. It will soothe those tempers. They will be brought probably into thinking in the right way. Let us hope that way, because they are, after all, not needing any agitation. They are coming into India's parliament, placing their oath on the Indian Constitution.
Well, how do you then see the cooperation between India and various other countries where these problems exist, given that there have been allegations and accusations against Indian intelligence agencies from so many of the countries where Khalistanis and Khalistani elements really have space and have found their homes, safe havens?
Oh, not so many. There is some issue in Canada, definitely. And there is one issue with the USA, but both India and USA know that these issues being investigated at whatever level they have to be investigated. The relationship is much bigger than these things. So I really don't see any big trouble happening because of some issues that have cropped up, whether it is in Canada or it is in USA. leadership of these countries is mature enough to understand that the bilateral relationship or the role that countries like India are playing today in the world is much bigger than these disputes. Will be able to handle those disputes very carefully and diligently. Please remember, India today is a very big and important power in the world. It is no longer a pushover. It's no longer a small third world country. It's a big power. It has arrived on the global scene. Its importance is recognized by everybody. Everybody wants to have a good relationship with India. India is a responsible power, responsible nation that also leaders understand. So I would see in the coming days Modi 3.0 being taken much more seriously by the world powers on all sides. Very interestingly, because of our very strong independent foreign policy pursued by Prime Minister Modi in the last 10 years, countries on all sides today respect and look up to India. I'm sure going further, this will be further strengthened.
Now, bear with me, Mr. Madhav, when I ask you this question on another challenge. We do know that Hindutva, the spread of Hinduism, certainly had become a part of India's foreign policy toolkit. We know that there was a major thrust, not just on Indian culture, but also on religion. Do you think that would diminish in this government, given it's a coalition government, that the Hindutva agenda would be less likely to be seen as part of Modi 3.0's foreign policy?
Remember, our foreign policy's supreme motto will be what we enunciated at the time of the chairmanship of G20, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We view the whole world as one family. This is one earth and our future is one. On that principle, we build our relations with the rest of the world. In that, whatever great cultural, civilizational values or that wealth that we have in our country that we can offer to the world, we will continue to offer that great civilizational, cultural wealth. So that should not be seen from any religious prism. Neither does the world see it from any religious prism. For example, we offered yoga. There can be some fringe groups which may say that yoga is Hindutva, etc., etc. But people know that yoga is the great civilizational cultural contribution of this great country Bharat for the time immemorial, for many millennia. Millennia-old Bharat is also a Bharat of Hindu civilization, Hindu culture. So one need not be very, apprehensive or very concerned about, any ideology being inserted into foreign policy. No ideology for foreign policy except Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world as one family, our future is one because this earth is one. With that in mind, we continue to offer our good civilizational cultural experience, our wealth to the world. And we try to enrich the world using that. There is no objection anywhere from the world about the richness of our culture or our civilization.
Okay. Well, then the Bangladesh Prime Minister is here, and they had raised concerns regarding CAA and NRC. At this point, how do you think India and Bangladesh are then going to take relations forward? There are niggling areas, but there's also a lot of cooperation between the two countries. So how do you see this relationship really move forward?
Bangladesh is a very important neighbor. And for the last about 50 years of its existence, we have had fairly good relations with that country. And under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, ever since she came to power almost 20 years now, we have had extremely good relations with that country. And Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina attaches a lot of importance to its relations with India. Prime Minister Modi, his ties with Bangladesh have been very strong. He visited that country several times. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited India several times. We have many bilateral initiatives going on. We have extended major financial aid to Bangladesh. We have extended support in addressing the humanitarian concerns of the Rohingya refugees in that country. And there are some outstanding issues, I know, issues like water sharing, etc. On those issues also, based on our mutual goodwill, we will continue to strengthen our relations. Uh, you are probably aware that at the ITLAS, at the UNCLOS, we had a dispute between India and Bangladesh. The judgment went in favor of Bangladesh. Unlike China, what it did with Philippines, we never said that we don't recognize that judgment. Instead, we accepted the judgment which went in favor of Bangladesh. That shows our enormous goodwill for this bilateral relationship. So Bangladesh-India relationship is already on a very strong footing, and it will continue to be on a very strong footing.
Well, when it comes to taking a strong position and achievements, there have been a lot over here. Let's just talk about one in a very adversarial situation where the Indian administration had to take a stand on Israel-Hamas, on Russia-Ukraine, continuing to purchase oil and defense equipments from Russia despite international pressure. How do you see this position of India, and do you think it will hold in times to come?
I really don't see any reason for any change of policy at this juncture, because we pursued the policy of strategic autonomy both in the case of Ukraine war and also in the case of the Gaza ongoing conflict in Gaza. In both the cases, first of all, we insisted that war should end. War should not be, it's not the time for war. And we also raised serious concerns over the humanitarian sufferings in Gaza. Beyond that, there is expectation, I know, that India should take sides. This is very strong in the Western world, that India should now openly come out in support of the Western bloc. But traditionally, India never sided with any one bloc in any international conflict. India's stand as an autonomous country taking its decisions independent of any pressure will continue, should continue, because when the appropriate time comes, India should be able to play the role of dispute resolving role. India should be able to play. Let me underscore one very important thing here. As India took this bold decision of staying out of joining any bloc, staying independent, not one, but closely 40 countries in the world followed India. They are not small countries. Countries like Indonesia, countries like South Africa, countries like Saudi Arabia, countries like UAE, Singapore. Around 40 countries today took an independent stand, refusing to join this side or that side. Because tomorrow, if you have to resolve the issue at the United Nations or elsewhere, you need to have a strong voice that plays a neutral and very justified stand. That role India will play when the real time comes. Non-alignment was that we will not join this group or that group. We will not have anything to do with this side or that side. That time it was necessary because we were a newly independent nation. We were not a very strong power for that matter. We were trying to build our own country. So we decided we will not join this side or that side. That was non-alignment. But today's strategic autonomy is the strategic autonomy of the strong. A strong country taking a position of neutrality. Here, we are not saying we don't deal with either side. We are saying we deal with both sides. We talk to America also, we talk to Russia also, we talk to Israel also, we talk to Palestine also, we talk to Saudi Arabia also, we talk to Iran also. So that is the kind of strategic neutrality that we are pursuing. It is the neutrality of the strong. It is not just the non-alignment of the weak. We are from a position of strength. We are today saying we are available for resolution of conflicts. We don't want to be a part of any conflict.
Okay, let's talk about promises. Now, the past administration had made quite a few promises, quite a few assurances as well. But when it comes to United Nations, we know you're talking about conflict resolution. Let's just talk about the UN body. India had said and has been maintaining that it is going to become a part of the United Nations Security Council. Do you think that promise will be kept, given that the biggest stumbling block is China in India ever getting close to a membership of the UNSC?
United Nations was originally created in 1945 as a body to end wars, bring peace to the world. Sadly, it failed to end wars in the world. And instead of bringing peace, it became a party to wars today for whatever reason. It needs a major reform, a major operation is required for this body. Otherwise, it has now become a redundant body. May I tell you, there are at least 4 or 5 dozen occasions when people wanted to, say a few things about what is happening in Gaza. Simply, America used its veto, not allowing countries to say anything. Similarly, in Ukraine war, China and Russia will use their veto. I mean, there is a very archaic kind of system in place of these 5 powers having veto powers, and there is no real outcome happening because of this kind of an arrangement. Either United Nations is reformed urgently, or we build other international forums. We use other international forums to resolve the crises that are raising their heads elsewhere. Let me tell you today, as United Nations, as the world's largest multilateral body, is becoming redundant with every passing year. Many multilaterals are rising. These minilaterals are actually now building their own framework for dealing with their own issues. For example, BRICS, with its 11 countries, this year is planning to have its own currency. BRICS countries will start now having their own economic activity within their countries. Then another countries are ready to join. So there are so many minilaterals rising, minilaterals are evolving. They are now taking things into their hands. Quad is emerging, SCO is emerging. So it is a time either we reformed UN in such a way that it can play a constructive role, giving space to countries like India. I mean, such a big country, important country, today has no significant voice in the United Nations. So that has to change. That has been our effort also. We have time and again flagged this issue that UN should reform from itself immediately.
Okay, would you call this de-dollarization? The fact that there is so much of conversation in exchange of currency or exchange of or trading in one's own currency. So is this de-dollarization that we're looking at, where countries are coming together to trade in their own currencies rather than in dollar?
De-dollarization should be understood carefully. It doesn't mean that dollar will cease to be an international currency. Dollar will continue to be an international currency. But when we talk about de-dollarization, what is happening today is that so many other currencies are floating around and we are able to trade in those currencies also. We have entered the era of sort of a multi-currency era. Today, for example, euro trades in 16% of the world trade. Euro is trading. And Chinese renminbi is trading in about 18% of the world trade. India's rupee trades in about 2% of the world trade. So multiple currencies are slowly increasing their presence in global trade for various reasons. For example, if tomorrow US imposes sanctions on any other country, that country has to do trade. So it tries to do trade in another currency. It doesn't do trade in dollar. To that extent, dollarization will come down. That is what is called de-dollarization, which is happening. It can go further when countries like, when minilaterals like BRICS start floating their own currency. Suppose BRICS countries, 11 countries, plus another 30, 35 countries which are interested to join BRICS, come out with a BRICS currency later this year. Although India never supported any such initiative. But if something like that happens, then again, an alternate currency to BRICS dollar will emerge. This is a natural thing that is happening as the world is evolving into plurilateral system, multilateral or plurilateral system. Plurilateral, why I'm saying is at one level are countries as multiple poles, but also at another level there are minilaterals that are also growing. So it's a very plurilateral arrangement. In this plurilateral arrangement, trading currency markets also will undergo a lot of change. That is what we sometimes describe as de-dollarization. That doesn't mean dollar will end tomorrow. Dollar will remain a very important currency. For example, all our revenues our foreign exchange revenues are stored in dollars in American chests. Even China stores $3 trillion worth, their certificates are with China. So dollar will remain an important currency in the world.
Mr. Madhav, the other big promise that the Prime Minister and the Modi administration made, I don't know if we could call it a promise, but certainly a part of the poll promises and campaign rallies was taking POK back, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Do you think that is something that is an achievable goal for the new administration, or was it just a part of an election campaign?
So it's not just a poll promise, remember. In 1994, India's parliament had unanimously stated in a resolution that the only outstanding issue between our two countries is to take the Pak-occupied Kashmir back. This was the resolve declared by the entire nation some 30 years ago. So it's not one party's poll resolve alone, it's the resolve of the whole nation. But that doesn't mean tomorrow we are going to war with any country. The region that is under illegal occupation of Pakistan for the last 7 decades legally belongs to us. It should come back to us. Towards that end, what necessary initiatives have to be taken, that will be taken at an appropriate time. All these things will happen at an appropriate time. What was stated was only a reiteration of the 30-year-old national resolve that has been articulated, as I said, in 1994 by the Indian Parliament.
Finally, Mr. Madhav, before I let you go, this is a different government. The Modi administration has not been able to come back with a simple majority, which means it is a coalition government with a weakened Bharatiya Janata Party. In such a scenario, do you think a furtherance of the foreign policy that they had already created so far in the last decade, as also will they find difficulties in shaping foreign policy in the coming future?
Coalitions have their own dynamic, no doubt. But NDA, BJP ran coalitions in the past also, much more complex coalitions. We had a coalition run by Mr. Bihari Vajpayee for 6 years successfully. 5 years successfully, I would say. The 1-year coalition did not last, but we ran the coalition successfully for 5 years. The leadership understood the dynamic of running a coalition government. I'm sure Prime Minister Modi also knows how to handle in a coalition, how to handle all the partners. Remember that while at the national level, BJP had full majority, still it ran coalition only, NDA coalition only in the last 10 years also. But fair enough, BJP had full majority, so it had its way. But in the states, right now, even in Maharashtra, in some other states in the country, BJP is very much part of a coalition arrangement. So we know how to run coalition governments. The government has the experience. I don't see any big difficulty in running this coalition government. Moreover, in this government, BJP enjoys a fairly strong presence with 240 seats. BJP is in a strong position. I'm sure with its strength on one side and with its ability to carry its alliance partners with it on the other side, BJP will be able to, Modi ji's government will be able to take this alliance along for next 5 years easily without any difficulty. There was no difficulty for 5 years when Vajpayee ran a much difficult coalition. I don't see any big difficulty this time with a relatively less complex coalition this time. And generally, on foreign policy, we have been able to build a national consensus Hence, I don't see really foreign policy being affected because there is a coalition government now. There is a larger consensus over our strategic autonomy, our neighborhood first policy, or generally the strong posture that India is taking in the world today.
Mr. Ram Madhav, thank you so much for speaking with India Today Global.
Thank you. My pleasure.